you remember a time? Well, good. That means you can partake in retrospection, which by definition is just a fancy way of saying remembering things. But I like to think of the word retrospection as having more reflective undertones. Like if looking back on things was to remember, then looking back and understanding what happened and what you can draw from it is to retrospect. When you remember, it's kind of like retrieving your past's interpretation of that past moment. When you retrospect, it's like your present self's interpretation of that same past moment. So for example, you might remember a TV show being really good, but in retrospect, it actually didn't age very well at all. So yeah, ultimately, retrospection leads to learning. It's learning from your past mistakes. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be mistakes. It can be successes or any other general experiences too. So maybe it's better to just say learning from your past. We don't have to go past that. So why is retrospection a thing that our brain has evolved to do? It might seem pretty obvious, but this mechanism of learning from your past is actually one of the most important adaptive abilities for survival. There's a reason why most, if not all, animals can learn in some degree. So humans can obviously learn, but so can monkeys and tigers and fish and insects. Some plants can even learn and remember things. So if you look at this plant here, if you touch it, it'll actually close up. It's a pretty cool defense mechanism. But later, when it reopens up and you touch it again, it actually remembers that that touch wasn't much of a threat, so it can actually just stay open. By learning, organisms can learn how to best behave in order to tackle anything that comes their way, which they might really have to be ready for in unpredictable environments. Retrospection is a powerful mechanism for learning, facilitated by memory because it gives us a first-person, practical reason to really burn in whatever it is that we learn. So let's say I touched a thorny bush and it really hurt and I started bleeding. When I look at that same bush in the future, I'm probably going to remember the pain and the blood and think about how inconvenient that was and remember not to touch the bush this time. Now, I want to talk about this idea of how retrospection can really be used to enhance the experience of TV shows or movies. And I'm going to use an example of this amazing show called VINLAND Saga. VINLAND Saga Season 2 just finished airing, and I have to say it was probably the most enjoyable time I've ever had watching weekly anime in the almost 15 years that I've watched anime. Like, they somehow made a season with every single episode being an S-tier banger. Like, I don't know how they did that, but it's peak fiction. I am going to talk about certain plot points related to one of the main themes in the show. It is going to be a light spoiler, but I just want to talk about how the story kind of forces the viewer to retrospect in order to hammer its theme home. But basically, Vinland Saga is a story in Viking times. We follow Thorfinn, who starts as a little boy who thinks war is so awesome, I'm gonna kill all my enemies, justice for the homeland, yada yada. But then his father, legendary Viking who abandoned the war, Thors, is like, trust me, you don't want to go to war, you have no enemies. But Thorfinn doesn't care, and he ends up getting himself stuck with a band of warriors and raised to become this warmongering Viking killer. This is basically the entirety of Season 1 until a bunch of stuff goes down and Thorfinn loses his life purpose and is sold to be a slave. Now opens Season 2, where we deal with the ramifications of Season 1. A now defeated Thorfinn deals with major PTSD after the many years of war and killing countless innocent people. He's very clearly depressed, he doesn't see a point in living and is ravaged by nightmares every night. Until he eventually has this amazing vision of his father, Thors, and realizes the weight of the words that he said all along. You have no enemies. So this kind of spurts Thorfinn onto the main arc of the show, which is to try and live in a better world that doesn't need violence. The very thing that he was raised on. The message that this gave is magnified by such a degree while watching the show, because in Season 1, violence was something that happened all the time and was constantly glorified. All the Viking characters loved war, and honestly, watching the action scenes, no matter how violent it was always something I enjoyed to see. I mean, seeing blood and guts spilling everywhere is pretty epic in certain contexts. But in the second season, where we see the people that are affected by the war in more terrible ways, everything is recontextualized. Anytime there's a violent act now, I cringe, as if it's something that doesn't seem necessary. It also makes me look back on Season 1 in a different light. Not as a story about badass Vikings killing their enemies, but a sad tale of humans killing and dying for a reason that probably isn't actually that good. By exploiting retrospection and giving information that recontextualizes something you encountered in the past, the effect of learning is much more enhanced, convincing, and engaging. So I highly recommend that you guys watch or read Vinland Saga. You will not be disappointed. So, we know that retrospection works by analyzing your memories, but what is a memory? Well, in our brain, memory is information that we sense and encode, then we store, and then we later retrieve. The actual neuroscience for this is pretty complicated and not fully understood, and I remember learning it, but I don't really remember that stuff anymore. And I'm not concerned that I don't. Why? Because we have solved memory. I'm not concerned that I don't remember something because I know somewhere it's written down and I can probably just search it up and find it later. Just because I forgot doesn't mean the information is gone for good. The memory still exists. So with writing, drawing, taking pictures, or recording videos, we can have a record of the past without even remembering it or without even being there. In a way, this is a physical way of storing memories. With this, we can also transfer memories to other people, including people who are in the future. This is yet another difference between retrospection and remembrance. I can retrospect on things that I don't remember. I can also look at old photographs, journals, projects, sketchbooks, stuff like that I don't really remember, and actually draw certain conclusions from them that I otherwise would have just forgotten about. Because I forgot what I looked like in middle school, or I forgot how bad I was at art, and I forgot how squeaky my voice was in my old Minecraft YouTube videos.
Hey guys. It's Dan here.
I can retrospect on times that I wasn't even there for. I can look back at the 80s, the medieval ages, or in caveman times and actually draw conclusions about the things that we can learn from looking at those periods. By recording things, humans have solved the issue of forgetting, and with no forgetting, there is infinite room for retrospection. This is why humans are smarter than they've ever been, because we can retroactively look at the multi-layered past of humanity and actually learn from it. Learning has kind of been this big group project for humanity. The things that we collectively learned in the past can be used to learn more in the future. A doctor 500 years ago had no idea that washing your hands was a hygienic thing that you should probably do. Plenty of guys in school washrooms have also apparently never figured that out, but I don't know, hopefully you have. Sometimes it's easy to feel like you aren't cherishing the present enough, but that's the cool thing about retrospection, is that you actually can enjoy the moment retroactively from the future. And that's okay too. It's just as valid of a way of enjoying a moment. Because retrospection works in this principled fashion, no matter how messy or confusing things can be, in time, things will make more sense. That is how our brain has evolved. Hopefully, I can look back on this in retrospect and, I don't know, maybe take something from it. Whatever it is, I'll leave for my future self to figure out. I had an idea for how to end this video, but I think I forgot. So, bye.